I don't mind going first as long as
Yay,
you
great.
ask no
Okay. Okay,
objection.
great.
Okay.
Great. Okay. So so you're all co-hosts, so feel free to share the screen if you like, and I'm going to mute myself and shut up. And thank you so much, Jessica, for putting the website uh on the chat. We've been active since 2014. 2014 is when the interest group started at ACRL National in the fall of 2014. And we started our meetings in 2015. I'm going to just mute myself.
Okay. Um, so I guess I will kick things off. I'm Lena Bowman. I'm the Data Management and Research Impact Librarian at the Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra Northwell. And I'm here today with Peter Herrera, the owner of Umwelt Dog Training. And together we are going to discuss starting a therapy dog program based on our experience founding the therapy dog program at Brown University together in 2015. The picture on the slide is my dog Baxter. He was a therapy dog in the program, though he has since passed away. In this presentation, we will be focusing on practical and logistical concerns you will probably encounter in starting your own therapy dog program. So first, I'm going to go over the program we founded, Brown Animal Assisted Therapy, so you can have some context for our suggestions. We started Brown Animal Assisted Therapy while undergraduates at Brown University during the 2015-2016 school year. There was already a program that brought dogs to campus for large end-of-semester events, so we wanted our new group to offer something different. We decided to have weekly therapy dog visits throughout the semester, and it ran on an appointment model. The students would reserve a 10-minute slot to meet with the dog. This had the additional benefit of being less overwhelming for the dogs and the handlers. In addition, we limited sessions to 2 hours and included breaks for the therapy dog teams. The program was structured as a student club with student leaders and volunteers who would make sure everyone moved through their appointments at the right times. By 2018, when I graduated, the club had over 800 members signed up for visits, which made it the largest club on campus at the time, and it won a campus award for Best Overall Student Club. When we proposed bringing dogs to the university, the immediate worry from the administration was about legal liability if a dog or student were injured. Therapy dogs are generally insured for their work, and we collected proof of insurance and proof of rabies vaccination for each dog. Many agencies that certify therapy dog teams also provide insurance for their dogs while they are working. For example, my dog and I were certified with Pet Partners, a national agency that provides insurance this way. Smaller local certifiers may have different insurance schemes. Collecting this information allowed us to get the program okayed by the University General Counsel. We were then allowed to move forward. As the therapy dog program became more and more popular, we encountered unexpected technology issues. With so many participants, Google Groups, which was our initial method of communication, became unreliable. Some students complained that the messages only arrived hours or days later. This was especially an issue because slots to see the dogs were so popular, they would sell out in less than 10 minutes most weeks. We decided to look for a platform that would streamline the reservation process and would help manage and communicate with the members. Ultimately, we settled on a startup called TidyHQ, which focused on information management for social clubs. One of the things TidyHQ is marketed for is selling tickets to events, and this capability meant that it could ensure every student got a fair opportunity to reserve a slot with the dogs. We were also able to sort our members into groups and message them separately, which was really useful for managing volunteers. So now I'm going to turn it over to Peter for the rest of the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Just making sure that everyone can hear me before I start. Beautiful. All right, so when we started, finding a space for the sessions was by far the trickiest part. We worked with student and employee accessibility services to determine which location on campus would be best, as not every building on campus would be set up properly for something like this. We considered locations that had hosted dogs in an official capacity previously. We also needed to ensure that our location could handle a consistent flow of people, could be cleaned easily after the sessions, and that this location was accessible. And finally, we needed every therapy dog pair to have their own private space, so it couldn't just be an auditorium. We ended up going with the student center, which was right off of the main green area on campus, and that was accessible to all members of the Brown community. Next slide, please. Part of the concern from the university was ensuring that we had a plan in place to deal with allergies. This was luckily a pretty easy fix, as we just purchased a vacuum cleaner specifically designed for picking up pet hair, and then we vacuumed thoroughly after our sessions each week, which I enjoy vacuuming quite a bit, so I like that. Next slide, please. And then recruiting dogs. So obviously a therapy dog program needs therapy dog teams. We reached out to a few different therapy dog organizations. These are groups that require their dogs and handlers to pass a test and adhere to their specific program requirements. We ended up working with Pet Partners, but there are several different groups, some of which are region specific. When we first started to explore this idea, we made field trips to other therapy dog events in the area to recruit teams. And luckily, people who are interested in therapy dog work are interested for a reason. And so it was pretty easy to find our first few teams at these events. And then obviously, because life is unpredictable, it's a good idea to have backup teams in case a given dog or handler can't make it for their scheduled session. And then we also wanted to make sure that our therapy teams always knew how much they were loved and appreciated by us and the students, the other students. So we made sure to provide them with thank you cards signed by students at the end of each semester.
So during my time running the program, we had 2 therapy dogs actually pass away, one after an extended illness. We found that the students really became attached to their dog, and they would come to the same dog week after week. And so when these events happened, they wanted to do something to help comfort the handler. Both times the dog passed away, we created an online card that the students could sign, and we took up collection to get the handler a small gift. So that's our presentation, and we will be happy to take questions.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, Lena and Peter. Really appreciate it. Are there any questions? You could either type in the chat, or you can unmute yourself if you have a question. We've been trying to do this for years, and we've had a lot of pushback from the lawyers on campus. So it's very interesting that you talk about some of the issues, especially the legal issues. Yeah. Okay. So Michael's question is, was funding involved? So did you receive funding?
So the first year we got funding from Student Accessibility Services. And mainly it was just to buy the vacuum. They bought the vacuum for us. They happened to have a little bit of extra money in their budget that year, so they were willing to do that. And then part of the reason to structure it as a student club was because there was already, a setup where we could go through the process as a student club to get funding for things we needed. And the final revenue stream actually became, because my dog and I lived on campus, we would do dorm events, and we realized the RAs had a budget for events, so we actually started charging them, which made it more sustainable.
So, Tate, 1 second. We have a question before you. Just 1 second. So we have. I love that we have questions. Yay! So we have a question in the chat from Teresa Doherty. Since demand for access to dogs is so high, did you have to restrict how many therapy dogs visit each student could participate in? So was there a number of therapy dogs that could come, per time slot?
You want to answer, Peter?
Yeah, so I believe when we first started and throughout the process, we had 10-minute slots per person. So each student would come in and meet with their given dog for 10 minutes. and then we would move on to the next person. So, and I think we would do 2-hour blocks. Is that right, Lena?
Yeah, and the students were allowed to bring friends. So, they could bring a group, and if the group was too big, it was really at the handler's discretion to know what their dog could handle. We didn't restrict how many slots they could sign up per semester, but we did have to kick a few people out because they would sign up for slots over and over and never come. So we just kicked them off the mailing list. But otherwise, it was very much a first come, first served. And, if you didn't get it, better luck next week.
And most people were very excited and very respectful about their time slots and would show up. So that was great.
Just okay. So Tate, your turn, because I have a question about, but you go first. So you can, yeah, go ahead.
I was having trouble figuring out how to phrase it, but I guess basically, were people aware that this was a library ran like initiative? Since you said it was hosted in the student center and, not in your facility, how did you guys kind of make sure people understood that this is the library trying to do this for the community?
So when we did it, it wasn't a library program because we were both undergrads. So it was just run by undergrads. I thought this would be helpful even if, to present here, because obviously I became a librarian. And I think there's a lot of practical issues people don't really think about. But I think for libraries, we did actually look at the library as a space and thought about using study carrels or like the little offices a lot of academic libraries have. So that's one space you can consider.
I'm just wondering, Tate, did she answer your question? I want to make sure I'm not cutting off. I'm wondering, do you have a recommendation on like how many dogs at one time could be, because we tried to do this and we had a lot of pushback at my particular campus for many years because of cost, also because of legal issues like dog bites, being allergic to dogs, etc. But how many dogs do you recommend could be, like, let's say, in the space, whether it's the library or the campus center, at one time?
Do you have any thoughts, Peter? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know that there is. So the benefit of working with these therapy dog groups is these dogs do well with people and with other dogs. So the concern about having too many dogs in one space is more of a space thing and not a matter of the dogs getting overwhelmed.
Okay.
So when we did it, we had 2 dogs in 2 separate rooms.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. I think it would just depend on the specific space and making sure that you could accommodate the flow of people with the number of dogs that you do have. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking like logistically about, you addressed the vacuum cleaner, you addressed the legal issues, because we've had lawyers that say, oh, well, like, what if the dog bites? What if the dogs are allergic? What if they dog like attacks? All of these interesting scenarios. And so I'm assuming that, therapy dogs are trained, so that's not going to happen. But again, I'm ignorant. I don't know. That's why,
Yeah, if you get certified by an agency, generally, like, the test is partially, basic obedience and partially role playing, basically, to show that your dog is dependable in different situations. But the big thing about being certified is that you get the insurance, which means, like, let's say, God forbid, a dog were to attack a student, the insurance would pay for it, not the university, which was the big legal issue. So I would advise you to definitely collect proof of insurance from every therapy dog pair, and also for the number of dogs, I think our high was 3 or 4 dogs, and we never had problems with too few students or, but, you know, I would definitely say you want a space that at least has enough room to separate the dogs somewhat, because like not all dogs like every single other dog that's ever existed. So, and plus it was for the privacy of the students, because often, you know, they'd tell the handler, you know, about their lives or whatever. And they, you know, we didn't want to have the other students overhearing all their conversations.
And the other nice thing is with pet partners and with most of the organizations that I'm familiar with, the dogs and handlers are certified as a pair. So the handlers also know, you know, they know their dogs obviously, but they've also been through that training. So they would advocate for their dog if, you know, they're getting a little overwhelmed, step away if necessary. So it's not as if anyone can walk in with a certified dog. They have to be a unit.
One thing that really surprised us, I think, about doing this project was that actually the quality of the human handler is really important too. Like a lot of the students really developed bonds not only with the dog, but with the human handlers. They became friends. Like actually, I still follow one of the handlers we had on Instagram, and this morning a student commented on her post saying that how much she misses her, she loved her dog, that kind of thing. So even like 5 years later, people are remembering those things happening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, I have like 100 million questions, but again, this has been excellent, because hopefully it will inspire everyone that we could kind of like position this type of program for, let's say, final exams, or let's say, you know, like a certain part of the academic year, and, you know, really focus on a targeted audience. And so this is excellent, and excellent example. So thank you so much, Lena and Peter. Are there any more questions for the presenters before we move on to the next presentation? No. Okay. Okay, so we have 3 more presenters. We have Holly Flynn, Michael Kahn, and Justine Cotton. Who would like to go next?
I could go now.
Great. Okay, great. Okay.
All right. So
Yeah,
I got
feel free.
screen.
Yeah, and I'm going to mute myself. Thank you very much.
Let me figure out how to get this in. Just a second. All right. All right. Let me. All right. So I'm Michael Kahn. I'm a librarian at Bronx Community College in CUNY in the Bronx. I live in New York City. Today I'm going to talk about a one-time, I guess we could call it a one-shot, since we're all librarians, one-shot mindfulness workshop, I guess, that we did when I was at the College of New Rochelle Library. I'll basically discuss what mindfulness is, the planning that went into it, describe the workshop, and a little bit of how it worked out. So let's take a look at what mindfulness is. So mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So, you know, a lot of us, sometimes we forget, we get lost in the past, we ruminate, but we worry about the future. And the mindfulness is when a person focuses specifically on the present. And even the present might not be so wonderful. One of the benefits of mindfulness is that when we focus on the present within accepting reality, that it is what it is, non-judgmentally. Mindfulness comes from Buddhism. It was brought to America by John Kabat-Zinn, who's a doctor, and I think a psychiatrist also. And he basically took away from it its Buddhist trappings to make it palatable to secular people in the United States too. Originally, he used it in a pain clinic in University of Massachusetts, and where he showed people how to just accept their pain and not fight it. And from there, it worked so well that it became very popular throughout the country. Mindfulness has been used, let's say, to decrease college students' anxiety, but that's not the only thing that it's been used for. New York City public school system has a program where they integrate mindfulness into among the students to help them with regulate their emotions. Dialectic behavioral therapy uses it for emotional regulation. ACT, another form of therapy, and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy uses it for depression. So the setting was a small library in a small satellite campus of the College of New Rochelle in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. Obviously, the College of New Rochelle was based out of New Rochelle and Westchester, but they had a couple campuses in the Bronx, in Brooklyn. They had one. They had in Manhattan too. So it was a small campus. It was 2 floors in a building, and the library was a very small library, and that made some constraints. There were 3 objectives. First of all, the students' emotional well-being. Students were very stressed. You had students working more than one job, raising a family, often on their own. Sometimes they would be working overnight. I'd have students, I taught a class at 9 in the morning, and students would be coming from working overnight and parking cars. So there was a lot of stress that the students were tolerating while they were also going to school. It was also a matter of student outreach. It was very hard to get students to come to the library because students didn't have the time, right? The college basically gave classes in the morning till 2, and then it gave classes from 6 to 10. So the question was, when are we going to help students get into the library? It was also faculty outreach. What we did over here was I had established a professional relationship with the head of the psychology department. I don't think they called it the psychology department. I think they called it the psychology interest. Students who were taking like a division of psychology as part of their degree. And that was important because I think that when we plan mental health outreach, we should be collaborating with the mental health professionals on the campus. I think, first of all, by collaborating, it establishes that outreach to both students and faculty, but they also have a certain knowledge that we might not be experts in. So, I learned from it to reach out. We didn't have a student like counseling center on campus, but I was able to reach out to this person, and we collaborated together on it. And she actually led the mindfulness workshop. Even though I was a practitioner of mindfulness, I felt more comfortable with her. Another reason why I felt more comfortable with her is that there is an element of liability with mindfulness. And it's interesting. The last presenters talked about liability. Mark had mentioned liability. Mindfulness, it's very popular, but there is some, it's not talked about a lot, but sometimes when you're having a person retreat into their inner world and be aware of what's going on in their thinking, in certain instances, people have trauma, other things, it may not be healthy. And therefore, I felt more comfortable having somebody who had a degree in it, even though I was just going for a social work degree at the time. I wasn't, officially trained. In retrospect, I wonder if I should have done more. Nothing happened, but I wonder if I should have done more to address liability. And I would look into that more in the future. So I coordinated time with the colleagues because we had such a small library. It was literally one room. You can't do mindfulness with noise around, even though technically you can. They do talk in Buddhism about the ability to focus even with all the noise around, but I wanted to have a quiet room. So we had to coordinate a time, and it was me, but I also had to get my colleagues on board. And I also approached the faculty member. And then, of course, there was the need for designing and posting flyers to get the students to know about it. Again, in retrospect, I would have had, I might have visited the classrooms. I might have had other faculty tell their classrooms about it. But what we did was we designed, posted flyers that it said, do you want to feel more relaxed? Come to the library, mindfulness workshop. And it showed a frog lying on its back on a lily pad, feeling very relaxed, looking very relaxed. It was a lightly attended workshop, again, because of the fact that students didn't have much time. The classes usually started at 6 p.m. We scheduled it for 5. We started out with a 5-minute while I welcomed the students. We told them we were happy they were there. And then the head of psychology oriented students to the concept of mindfulness, of being in the present. Then she spent 10 minutes leading the students through a very classic mindfulness practice where they focused on their breath, which is the idea, again, of just being aware of the present. A lot of times when people don't realize that they're even breathing, they're focusing more on all the things in their head. And then she did what's called a 5-4-3-2-1 exercise. It's pretty common person where every student, let's say, names 5 things that they see, 4 things that they hear, 3 things that they feel. It could be even their clothing, it could be the chair, 2 things that they taste, and 1 thing that they smell. Again, the idea is having students learn how to be grounded into the present. Then the students did a 10-minute checkout. Students spoke about how they found the workshop and how it made them feel. The participants appeared to relax as they engaged in mindfulness. We did do a formal assessment, but their affect was clearly relaxing throughout the time. And they discussed that they could see using mindfulness in their lives going forward. When it came to, was it a success getting students to actually use the library more? It really was equal. What happened was we saw the students who came to the workshop were the students who all along were coming to the library to begin with. So it seemed like it didn't increase, it didn't decrease. It was one more example of how those students got to use the library again. In retrospect, like I said, we might have publicized it a little bit differently. Some of the challenges and lessons learned is, again, the limited space, the student time constraints, the need to offer increased workshops, the benefit of having this relationship with someone from the mental health faculty, and also know where you're allowed to hang library signage. I think I've heard Mark talk about signage in the past. We hung signs in the elevator, and then we found out that we weren't allowed to hang signs in the elevator because we rented space. And since the elevator stopped on floors that we weren't renting, we got a whole big, like, they got very upset at us for hanging those signs over there. But we also hung signs all over the places that we were allowed to. So it was a learning experience. And you know, I have some articles. This is an example of somebody, Bremer, who had more space, and she actually created a meditation room in a small college library. So if you do have more space, you might want to consider such a thing, you know, do a pilot tryout, and then eventually move it to a small room and see how popular that is. And this does talk about we have an article that does talk about the risks, which is something that's not as well known. I would say that it was a positive experience for myself and the students, and also something that I was able to learn from.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was excellent. I have like tons of questions, but I want to ask, does anyone have any questions for Michael? This is such an interesting topic. Any questions? Please feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourself if you have questions. Okay. I have a tiny question.
Yeah.
Do you, so obviously you did this at the College of New Rochelle. Now that you're at CUNY, have you thought about kind of implementing this at CUNY during a specific time of the year to a specific target audience? And of course, my question you had brought up is that when you're at College of New Rochelle, the people that were taking advantage were current library users. So in one of your, like, let's say your marketing or outreach objectives is to get like non-users to use the library. I think
Right.
that would be a good strategy to get, new people to use the library. And I'm wondering if that would be something that you might be interested in doing at BCC, because I would be interested in doing that at CSI. Yeah, so I'm also at a CUNY school, and there are 25 campuses in the CUNY system. So I just think that having a pilot at different CUNY locations would be an excellent idea. And I think that partnering with with counselors or with either academic advisors or mental health counselors is an excellent idea. But what do you see as what you learned at the College of New Rochelle, and moving forward, what would you change or revise in the future?
So I definitely would try to figure out a new way where I am now that it would be able to bring in students that haven't been in the library as much. I'm still learning since I'm new, but I know orientation's coming up. I don't know if it's the type of thing that you mentioned we're going to be holding in the full orientation. You know, I mean, we definitely do have a lot more space compared to where I was then. And I would definitely, love to do such a thing. Speak to the counseling department. I think in general, there's an importance of, connecting to the counseling department with and the library. And I think that this is one example. In fact, students who do, like, even having a big poster on the wall in the counseling department, having students know that we're going to hold a mindfulness workshop might not be a bad idea, because people who go to the counseling department may find out about mindfulness, and that may get them to come to the library, and once they're there, use the library more.
So Justine had a really good question, and I'm just going to mention what she wrote in the chat. Thanks for the presentation, Michael. Would you feel comfortable leading the session now? So in other words, now that you have your MSW in counseling, do you feel more confident to lead it now, as opposed to when you were at College of New Rochelle? That's a very good question, Justine.
Yeah, I'm an LMSW. I'm a licensed master's social work. I'd feel more comfortable. I'd want to run it by whoever needs to approve it, but I definitely would feel more comfortable.
Okay, and thank you. That's excellent questions. Also, the issue of signage, is that you're referring to, like, the politics of the institution, that you hung a sign in a place that you shouldn't have. So that was more of the internal politics that happen at academic institutions. But the fact of having a sign is very important in promoting an event, and whether the sign, and I think having a sign in an elevator is an excellent location to promote an event. So it just seems like my understanding is, if the library is sharing space with another academic unit or another, so there's like this kind of internal politics that of course exists everywhere we go, and you can't avoid it. But I think having a sign is a very important promotional piece, an asset to promoting the event, having it on the website, having it on social media, having a physical sign, a digital sign. So I just want to say that, like, signs are important. I mean, they create awareness. So
it wasn't that the college was telling us we shouldn't be putting signs on college property. It was that the landlord of the building was telling us that the college has no right to put signs in the elevator.
Because you're sharing the space with other. I get. Okay, fine.
I never imagined that was going to happen, but all right.
Yeah, no, that's like, that's yeah, very interesting. I also notice, I'm just going to read Lena's comment, is that so at my college, like the lawyers didn't allow the library to do it for like legalities, but other departments kind of skip the lawyer, they skip legal counsel, and they just did it anyway. We weren't allowed to do that because that wasn't the best practice. That wasn't, but I know that there were other departments on campus. And I just want to mention for those of you who work in academic institutions, when we have a library event, we're competing across the whole campus for other events. So, it's, having low attendance is expected because even before the pandemic or during the pandemic or now post-pandemic, we're competing with other units on campus that are also having events that also want students to come. So, it's a very, very important point that there might be therapy dog events, or there might be mindfulness, events that are maybe on campus, but not necessarily sponsored by the library. So Lena wrote, in my experience, holding library events has a longer tail in making people think about the library, even if they aren't that many attendees. So I agree completely.
I appreciate her saying that. Hopefully that was the event. We used to have library dog events in the main campus, but we didn't have that where I am, partially because I'm afraid of dogs. And I'm also I was very into mindfulness, so I decided that I would go with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michael. Are there any other questions from other we have 46 people who are here, which is wonderful attendance this afternoon. So thank you all for attending. Are there any questions for Michael before we move on to the next presenter? Okay. And thank you. So we have two more presenters. We have Justine Cotton and Holly Flynn. And who would like to go next? Okay, great, Justine.
That's
great.
okay with Holly.
Okay.
Okay. All right, bear with me. I'm going to share my screen, and I am notorious for technical difficulties. So
no worries. I'm going to mute myself. Thank you.
Okay. Can everybody see that? Yes. Okay. Perfect. All right, so thank you so much for having me here. I'm following two really excellent presentations. So let me get this going. So my name is Justine, and for the last couple of years, I've run a wellness book club at Brock University. So it started during the pandemic. I had just returned from maternity leave and had already been feeling super isolated. In Canada, we have longer leaves. So I had been away from campus for a long time and getting back into an environment where everybody was online, nobody was on campus, and just felt very, very isolated. I missed the students, I missed my colleagues. So that's where this all began. So I'm just going to take you through what it's been like and hopefully give you some ideas that you can take back to your own campuses. Okay, so I'm a teaching and learning librarian at Brock, and we're a university of about 19,000 students. And my own research area is in creating wellness experiences for students. So in my other role, I'm a fitness and yoga instructor. So I've been over the years kind of incorporating a little bit of library yoga, some different techniques to try to make students feel a little bit less stressed as they go through their studies. And so I started thinking, well, I will kind of do some research on this and see if it actually has an effect. Okay, so the background was, we know during the pandemic and even before the pandemic, students were really suffering a lot with loneliness. So that young adult group, at least in Canadian statistics, seems to be suffering from that feeling of loneliness more than other age groups, which is pretty surprising because that's the age where you're supposed to be social, you're supposed to be out with your friends and kind of out there on the town, but it doesn't seem to be the experience for a lot of young people. During COVID, there was a lack of opportunities for students to get together and just to feel like they're a part of the campus. And I had done some research on the established benefits of recreational reading, and I'll talk a little bit about those in a moment. And also just my own feelings. So selfishly, I was feeling isolated, and I thought, how can I kind of reconnect with students and share my own interest in reading with them? Okay, so there's lots of research out there about the benefits of recreational reading, some from psychology, some from librarianship. basically what it boils down to is what they've noticed in research is that reading fiction especially increases empathy. Reading in general can reduce stress, improve sleep, and is great exercise for the brain. So there's some interesting research about how reading for fun can kind of reduce Alzheimer's, memory problems, and in younger students, elementary school students, really expands their vocabulary, which can lead them on the way to really great academic performance. And then when you have a community of readers, when you have a book club, you also have that social connection too. So sharing your experiences of the books and just chatting in a more relaxed environment than say you would do in a lecture hall or in a seminar room. So I just wanted to quickly ask what your experience is with either recreational reading or book clubs. Does anybody lead a book club or is part of a book club? You can type that in the chat. I'm not sure if I can monitor it from the screen, but even if you want to unmute real quick and just say your own experience. I'll just give a couple minutes or a couple of seconds.
I'd like to plug the library marketing book club that's on Facebook. And there's a podcast called the Library Marketing Book Club where people read, but it's nonfiction. I'm sorry, but I'm just saying it's a book club. I'm sorry. No, I'm just saying, I just want to plug that. But anyway, okay, I'm sorry, but it's recreational.
Thank you.
It is, it is recreational. It is recreational.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, Mark. That's good to know. I did not know that. I'm going to look into that. Anybody else really big into book clubs or really big reader? I'm assuming because you guys are involved in libraries, you're a big reader. So I'll just make that assumption. And that's okay. We can talk about this at the end during the Q&A. So I'm just going to move ahead to tell you a little bit about the Wellness Book Club. So it's been running since the fall of 2021. So in Canada, compared to the United States, depending on where you were, I think which state you were in, we had some pretty intense lockdowns. So in the fall of 2021, classes were still entirely online and access to campus was very limited. One of the aims of the book club for me, I really wanted students to have a physical copy of the book. So I purchased a number of copies and students had to come to campus to pick it up. So that involved a little bit of trickiness with research ethics. They had to have a COVID vaccine in order to come to campus. So there's a little bit of trickiness there. I did have a backup plan in the back of my mind. If someone wanted to participate and couldn't make it to campus, my plan was to drop it off to them or ship it to them. But luckily that didn't happen. So the first fall we did Tuck Everlasting. It was a virtual book club and I had 5 participants. So I was pretty pleased about that. Winter 2022, we were still in a lockdown. We had, I think, opened up and then locked back down again, but students could still come to campus. So that time we did a nonfiction book, which was really great read. If you ever have a chance to read this book, it's all about how exercise does so much for our mental health, our academic performance. It's a fantastic book. So this one was great. We had 22 participants. They were all very engaged online. And a lot of them I'm still in contact with. A lot of these book club members I'm still in contact with either through social media or just following up. They would contact me if they had questions about the library. Fall 2022, I started my sabbatical. So we did this in person. I had 5 participants. We did a fiction book and that was a lot of fun. This fall, I'm going to be doing the book, The Gospel of Wellness, which you can see up on the screen, a really great exploration of some of the darker sides of the wellness industry. And I think it's going to be really exciting for students. I really enjoyed it. And I think there's lots of potential for discussion there. Okay, so I thought I'd share some challenges and lessons learned. You will probably identify with some of these. There will always be more interest than participation. So I remember when I opened the sign up, so many people were interested. And then when it came to actually participating, much less, of course. Virtual seems to work better with students and is much easier in terms of planning it and running. I did these on Zoom, planning and running the sessions. In person just seems to be a real struggle. A lot of students said they wanted to meet in person, but it just never seemed to work out. Okay, a small group works better. Financially, number one, buying the books. It's a lot easier to buy 15 copies of the book than anything more. And also for discussions. When you're on Zoom, it's very hard to have the discussion if it's a really big group. So small seems to work better, and they get to know each other, and just is more conducive to some of the more personal reflections that people might have. So originally when I started, I had done a mix of qualitative and quantitative questions in the survey that I gave them. So what I did was a pre-survey and a post-survey. My goal was to figure out if this reading had an effect on their stress levels. So I used a stress scale, and the goal was to compare the results. What I realized was it was very time consuming for the students to fill in that pre and post survey. So during this next iteration of the book club, I'm going to focus more on qualitative questions. So really kind of getting them to describe how the book club made them feel, how they felt in terms of their stress, and whether this had a positive effect. Number 5, while there's unique benefits to fiction, I think that nonfiction might be a better fit for students during their semester because they can dip in and out of nonfiction books. So a lot of times, if they're looking at, so say, Where the Crawdads Sing, it's not a hard read, but it does involve carving out a good chunk of time to sit and read the book. The nonfiction book that we read was divided into chapters. They could pick things based on their own interests. So I know some of them only got to some chapters. Maybe they were more interested in exercise and depression or exercise and academic performance. They could dip in and out of the books. And finally, it's an amazing way to get to know students and build a little community on campus. So something really fun that happened just this past weekend, I was teaching a yoga class at an aromatherapy shop in Niagara. And one of the participants came up after and she said, "You ran the book club," and back almost 2 years ago now. So she remembered, and we had a great conversation, and a lot of them I still keep in touch with. So for me, personally, it's been a great experience. And she shared with me how nice it was to have that little copy of the book to keep. And I would also make up little wellness packages for them with, some tea, a little sticker, a motivational sticker. So they really liked that. So some of the findings, I'm still kind of dealing with the findings and the research. I've got 3 sets of surveys to go through, more this fall. So the student experiences of stress during COVID matched the trends among young adults nationwide. And one quote that really stuck with me, he or she was feeling very scared during the pandemic. And she said, I'm still scared a lot of the time. So pretty heartbreaking reading some of these comments. Most participants worked a job during the semester. That was one of the questions I asked, and overwhelmingly really positive response to the reading and the meetings. And students remembered. So just like I said, they remembered each other, and they remembered this positive experience with the library. A lot of them would contact me with questions. I helped one of the students, even if it wasn't my research area or my subject area, she had questions for her master's thesis. So she worked closely with me on it. So these are a few quotes. I won't read them all. I'll give you a moment to read through them. I kind of highlighted what stuck out to me and what my goal, I felt like I really met the goal of this project. So allowed me to further understand my own struggles and see how common they are, made me feel more connected to people in a similar situation as myself, and definitely helped to prioritize my mental health and overall well-being over school. So that was a goal. These were all goals of mine. So I was very, very happy that I was able to get this feedback. Okay, let me move ahead here. Okay, so opening for questions. I did start a little website during my sabbatical, librarywellness.ca, which you can check out. I have lots of blog posts, lots of resources. I've placed this PowerPoint up there today too. There's my email. I'm most active on Instagram. So it's like kind of my fitness account, but also my personal account. So I would love to connect with you guys there. And I will stop my screen sharing and come back if anyone has any questions.
That was excellent, Justine. We do have a question. And the first question, because we have a few in the chat, is how often did the group meet? This was from Teresa Doherty. That like literally she read my mind. So how often did you?
So we pretty much, what I would do is I would set up, if it was on Zoom, we would set up a slot of possible times. Usually I would invite students to come maybe to 2 meetings or even just one. So whatever worked in their schedule. So I think in total, I would set up maybe 5 meetings at different times during the day and evening, and they would join in. So I think a couple of them came twice, but most of them came just once to chat about the book. And I would send them discussion questions in advance.
And Tate's question, excellent. Do you think you'll move back to virtual with maybe just a meeting a few times to discuss? In other words, will you be okay? Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Tate. Will you be doing the option of hybrid in person, doing a mix like both, or what is the modality that you're going to be choosing, or what you're preferring? Tate, please let me know if I did not interpret your question correctly.
The only thing I'd add to that is
Sorry.
specifically, no, you're fine. The only thing I'd add to that is just that 100%, but would you do it specifically with the goal to increase your attendance? Or is that maybe not as important to you as like being able to be with the students and experiencing the book? Or are you trying to find ways that you can reach more people with this group?
Yeah, great question. So I think I'm definitely going to move back to a virtual club just because it's so much easier. And I think the students, even though they say they like in person, I think virtual just works better. But what I was thinking of doing this time was asking the library to purchase an e-copy of the book if we don't already have one, and then possibly doing an Instagram live on our library channel to just invite people to. We did that with the Spark book. Myself and the recreation coordinator, we did a chat together about students and exercise and mental health to try to encourage students to read the book. We had an e-copy of the book in the library. So I'm happy for the club itself and for the research to keep it small, but my goal is always to have more people reading recreationally. So I think maybe an Instagram live or maybe some kind of virtual discussion could work too. I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Thank you, Tate, for again clarifying the question. I want to make sure I'm not like reading it like verbatim, but also kind of interpreting as well. Michael has asked, Michael Kahn has asked if you have a suggestion of a specific book, would you have a recommendation? And Jessica's question is, did you give a choice of books? Did you choose, or you actually asked library users to choose, let's say, a specific from a selection of books?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of letting students choose, what I did I did choose the first one because it was very, very rushed and I wanted to pick a book I had already read. We have a discount bookseller in Niagara that sells lots of books at a discount price. So sometimes I try to buy from them. Tuck Everlasting, because it's such a short book, I thought was a great choice. And then I also did a few Instagram polls. I would give like a choice of 4 books just to see what the students at least who follow the library, what they would be interested in reading. I didn't do that this time because I really wanted to do that Gospel of Wellness book because I feel like it's so, just thinking about wellness, it's got so many interesting possibilities. And I think it's a great read for students who are so susceptible to some of the negative wellness trends. That's something I've been struggling a lot with is like, do I even use the word wellness? Do I avoid certain things? We talked a little bit about liability and I think about that too, but then I also think of, how far as an academic library do we want to go in terms of wellness? I think there's a real sort of struggle there. Mindfulness, when there's research behind it, I think that's a natural fit. But when it comes to some of the more questionable things, I always feel like a little bit nervous. So I think that for a book recommendation, I think young adult fiction is great. I can share so many books, or even like a nonfiction, like the Gospel of Wellness is a nice one, I hope.
So Nicholas has a question, and it's, did your attendance rates go up or down when you picked the books?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, because I feel like ultimately I picked all of them. Okay. Yeah. It would be interesting to know that though.
No, definitely. And it's also great because you're promoting, I'm assuming you're promoting books that are in your collection, right? So that's right? I mean, I know that you're an
Yes.
academic library, but I'm assuming that you have a collection, of recreational reading. I think, or I don't know for sure,
We
but
do.
yeah, so that's great. We don't, and so I think every academic library is really, really different. So I think that if it does the dual process of also promoting recreational reading and pleasure reading and promoting a part of your collection, then you're doing multiple promotional opportunities. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great question to see in the future, that kind of to measure whether attendance goes up and down, whether you have library users choose the books or whether you would choose. It's a good question.
Yeah, that would be.
Definitely. Okay, thank you
I had a
so
question.
much. Oh, yay, we have more questions.
How did you actually market the event? Just because I know I love the idea of book clubs, but it is a time-consuming thing we're kind of asking students to do. Were there targeted ways that you marketed to try to get students who might be more interested in that type of participation?
Yes, so I did in our popular reading collection on the main floor. I would put posters there, posters at the checkout desk in the library. I used Instagram a lot for marketing because that's what I'm most comfortable with, and it seems to be like, well, I don't know where the students are these days. I'm not really in touch, but we do have a lot of Instagram engagement, and so that's some of the ways. And then I did have return people too who just wanted to do it again. So yeah, word of mouth, I guess. A lot of times they would share it with their friends, and but I'm always interested in new ways. So hopefully pick some new ideas up.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Justine. And again, emphasizing the power of word of mouth. Word of mouth and Instagram as marketing tools are like so affordable, virtually free. I mean, they're much more affordable than using like print marketing types of tools and advertising. So it's great. It's and again, there is power in word of mouth for sure. So if there aren't any more questions for Justine, so Justine, also thank you so much for supplying your website, posting the presentation on your website, and we're also going to be posting this this video as well. So you got many ways of accessing the presentation. So thank you so much. Our last presentation is from Holly Flynn from Michigan State University. And Holly, you are a co-host, so please feel free to share your screen at any time. Thank you very, very much.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Let's see. Can you all see that? Great. Well, thank you for having me. My name's Holly Flynn. I'm the head of outreach and engagement at MSU Libraries, which is a large R1 land grant university with about 60,000 students. I'm going to be talking about creating community and the library as a safe space after a mass trauma. I wanted to let you know that I am going to be talking about some difficult things at the beginning, but not like in great, awful detail. So on February 13th of this year, a gunman came on campus. He had no university affiliation with us and went into 2 campus buildings. 3 students were killed and 5 were seriously injured. This is a picture of a graduate student who is a writing consultant for the Writing Center on campus. We have the Writing Center up on the 3rd floor of the library. And so he was on CNN that night talking about how he had barricaded in the library. They had kind of pushed over bookcases in front of group study rooms and stayed in there all night. So most of this happened after 8 p.m. on campus. And then the gunman took off and nobody knew where he was for hours and hours after that. So it was really awful, completely awful event that I hope nobody else ever has to go through. So during that time, of course, the library was locked down. I was texting our student workers to see if they were okay or where they were. I have 6 student workers who answer reference questions out in the residence halls, and I'd only heard from 5 of them that night. So I was really just worried and watching TV all night long. As the evening wore on, some things became pretty clear. The library, I certainly wanted to do something, and as I was texting our dean, she also wanted to do something to help once the library reopened at some point. I think my presentation kind of dovetails nicely with Lena and Peter's, because I've been doing therapy dogs on campus in the library for 10 years now. So like everything they mentioned, I would say a big yes to. I agreed with all of it. So it seemed like the easiest thing to do would be to have therapy dogs in the library once we reopened. And actually, as that night was going on, around 11 p.m., the police held their first press conference. So we were everyone, I think in Michigan, was watching that at the same time. And I started, like within 10 minutes after that press conference, I was getting emails from our therapy dog court volunteers at the library saying, please let me come in. I'm willing to come in. If you do something, let me know. I'll be there. We've worked with 2 therapy dog court organizations over the years, Love on a Leash and Therapy Dogs International. There are branches of those in every state. So there are probably some in New York as well. All of the dogs are independently owned though. And I've just gotten to know all of their owners over the years. We've become really good friends. They come back to visit me. Even we've also had several dogs pass away in the 10 years I've been doing this, and their visitor or their owners still come back and visit me in the library, even if they're just out of state. They just come back. They just love hanging out in the library. So normally when we put together a library event, we probably do the same things as many of you. We would have a whole marketing plan, which we just didn't have time for. And normally I would get together the dogs, like it's just me and the dogs. In this case, I had to find a whole bunch of other people in the library to help because I didn't think I could do this all by myself. And it just required a lot of flexibility. Trying to do something this big, this fast was really difficult. So as far as promotion and marketing, normally we would have paper flyers for a library event. We would do a whole social media campaign. We would have it up on our digital screens. In this case, we really had to flex and be a little bit creative because, for one thing, the shootings happened on a Monday night. The university closed the university for 2 days after that because it was a very large crime scene to process. Actually, most of the students left in the middle of that night. Their parents drove for hours overnight and picked them all up, other than like our international students who were stuck there and a few others. If you lived in a residence hall and that was your home, some people stayed. So for 2 days we were closed. Thursday, the library reopened, and it was really just our facilities crew putting it back together, putting the shelves back up and putting the books back on the shelves. And so when I came in on Friday, actually it looked completely normal. I was not feeling very good about coming back in the library at that point, I have to admit. But we decided at that point to have the therapy dog program on Friday. I wasn't even sure anyone would come because I thought nobody was there on campus. So we really relied just on social media for promotion of this event. Normally our social media does not have a very big following. I have to admit, we've had multiple communications managers over the years who have different flows and different philosophies of how to do things. And we've lost a lot of our following. But fortunately, the university picked up on all of it. So our Instagram posts about it were liked by like 18,000 people. I think what they were finding out after all of this is that parents were watching a lot and following a lot of social media, and then were telling their students about it. And so it was basically all social media and all word of mouth. The event itself, the first one was great. We had, there were probably 30 people in the room at all times, and it went on for 3 hours, I think. We had 7 dogs at a time, and they would kind of swap out after an hour. And we were also contacted by a Detroit Free Press reporter who knew a MSU faculty person who actually has a therapy dog. And so that's how they made the connection. And I was really, really reluctant to let media into these events. But in this case, the Detroit Free Press reporter stayed the entire time. And she was really quiet and just let students talk if they wanted to. And if they didn't, that was fine too. We had therapy dog events every day for the next 2 weeks. And so I was dealing with all of that. Our communications manager was actually on leave at the time. So after that first one, then word really got out and everybody started coming to the library for our therapy dog events. Partly because they did have tons of therapy dogs on campus at that point, but they were all in a couple of places, like they were sometimes in the residence halls, which you have to live in a residence hall to go into one and go to an event there. And not everybody lives in a residence hall. A lot of them have off-campus apartments. And some of the therapy dog events came with a counselor. And there were, I think at that point, a lot of students who thought, well, I wasn't in that classroom, I don't need a counselor. So ours were just the therapy dog teams, and they were extremely popular. Part of the problem was, though, after that, every newspaper and TV station in the state of Michigan and beyond started coming into the library and sticking a camera or microphone in front of people's faces, which was awful. It was completely awful. And I got interviewed many, many, many times, which I just was not prepared for, I will admit. After a while, I also partnered with our makerspace coordinator. Her name's Jamie Moriarty. And she started this event series called Make and Sustain. It ran at the same time as our therapy dog events. And they were just like little crafting pop-ups. People could go upstairs, they could make something with perler beads, they could do something with the 3D printers. She did watercoloring, just anything. And so eventually we made flyers for those events and handed them out at the therapy dog events because they were on 2 different floors of the library. The therapy dog events were right in the lobby as you walk into the library, and our maker spaces upstairs. And so we kind of tried to feed people upstairs as well. And those were extremely popular. And she works with MSU Sustainability, which is the recycling center on campus. And so they also retweeted it and got word out. And I think they have a pretty big reach as well. Not every event that we did in response to this was a great event. Most of them were. The one that we had on the Friday, right after the shooting, was really an amazing event. Like the week before, I had gone to an international student tea to talk about the library. That's the kind of thing, I guess, outreach librarians do a lot during the year. And I didn't think about it afterwards. But then one of the students from that came to our therapy dog event, and she was just crying and crying and crying. And when she saw me and one of my colleagues, it just, I don't know, she started smiling, and that was kind of the reaction of everyone in the room. It was really somber at first, but then they really just created a community in there, and everybody came out feeling a little bit better. Our development officer in the library, her kids go to the school district nearby, Brighton, which has its own facility dogs. And they offered to bring in their facility dogs one day. So these were not dogs I had ever worked with before. So I said, well, okay, that's fine. We need more dogs. So I asked for, I think, 4, they sent 15 and all at the same time in the lobby. There were probably 400 people sitting in our lobby, and all of the therapy dogs that I work with, you know, we have certain policies and rules they have to follow. They have to be on a leash. They have to be at least 5 feet apart. They have to this, that, and the other thing. These dogs, they were letting them run around off leash. Some of them were therapy dogs in training that were like puppies that were barking. It was awful. I think I had kind of a little panic attack out there. So some events were great. Some could have used maybe a little bit more work. I did not really keep statistics of how many students visited our dogs because I really just wanted to help and be a part of this healing process. And I didn't want to, I don't know, keep statistics on it. But that it was attended by many, many, many people. We had dogs every day for 2 weeks after the event. Then we went on spring break for a week, and then we had dogs weekly after that until finals week, in which we had them more often. But I think it did strengthen our partnerships with the community. I heard from so many other therapy dogs across the state after that happened. And I think it made those of us in the library stronger. Usually after library events, you aren't hugging your coworkers or crying, but in this case we were. And I think just in general, it made students more aware of library spaces and our resources, and feel a little more comfortable coming on campus after such an awful event. I mean, that first week back, none of us were feeling all that great about being there, but there's something about happy dogs that just want to be petted that I think calmed things down a bit. Well, I don't know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Holly, for sharing. I know I reached out to you and I kind of like pushed you so I apologize, but I just want to say, I mean, it was such a wonderful presentation, and just I knew when this happened, I really wanted to reach out to you to make sure you're okay, but also to just really highlight the very, very valuable work that you do at MSU, specifically after such a tragedy. So thank you for sharing. It was it's very, very upsetting, because I mean, you'd be doing these events anyway, I mean, you want to be able to have the library as a safe space for mental wellness, for de-stressing, but especially after, something so tragic and traumatic. I commend you for responding so quickly. It's just amazing. And I know that, academic institutions are obsessed with statistics and with assessment, but, really the human aspect is you just want to support people, students, faculty, so thank you for doing something, and also for sharing something that is so special, and that you did really at the like a snap. You responded right away. I mean, I think you're like a superhero. So thank you, Holly. Thank you so much. Are there questions for Holly on this phenomenal presentation on on really responding to trauma and to tragedy by having something that is truly therapy on so many levels? Let's just take a look if there's anyone in the chat. Okay. So I'm just looking through the chat. Anybody, if you want to unmute yourself, please feel free to ask Holly any questions. So you've been doing this for 10 years, so this is obviously, you're very, very, very comfortable. Is there anything that you did that was different than the other? I'm just wondering if there's something that was different.
The only thing we did differently with the session, the Friday of the week of the event, was normally our events would be down in the lobby. So it's just kind of like passive programming. You see it as you go past, you stop in for a few minutes and pet a dog. I figured since this one would be maybe a little more emotional and people might want some privacy, I had that in our event room. So then we had to have people kind of stationed downstairs and say, you know, it's upstairs because it's not in a really obvious spot. And there was like nobody in the library that day. So you knew if they were in the library, they were there for that event.
Mhm.
And we also just served coffee and cookies. People donated stuff and we put it out. And normally we wouldn't have food at a dog event.
Right. So Tate has a really good question. Do you feel students still interact on campus after such a traumatic experience?
I think so. The Sunday after the event, there were a couple of grad students who put together something called Spartan Sunday. They kind of figured everyone would be moving back on campus at that point. And so they just got a bunch of businesses and different people to hand out things on campus. And they figured it'd be a little tiny event. And it was enormous. Like giant corporations were passing out things. People were passing out flowers. We kind of marked up the windows in the library and let people write nice notes and inspirational messages on the windows. And I think the library has become more of a place people go to hang out since then. I don't feel like people are just squirreling away in their in their house or something at this point. But it's been, I don't know, it's going to take us a long time to get through it.
Do you?
We also had the,
No, I know. I don't know about other institutions, but and I've been on sabbatical the whole year, so I don't even know what's going on. But I know that after the pandemic, we've had generally like lower attendance in the physical facility. So I don't know if in those of you in Canadian institutions or across the United States that our general like library in-person attendance has gone down. And you know, I mean, of course, enrollment has gone down nationwide. I don't know about Canada, but I know, you know, in at least in the 15 years that I've been living in the United States, I know that attendance enrollment has gone down, and post-pandemic in-person attendance has gone down. In your experience, you're saying that that more people came to the library as a physical, like a means of support after this event.
yeah, I think so. Our gate counts have been way down for ever since 2020. But I feel like even finals week this year, in the past, we would do all these crazy finals week events. And the past couple of years, attendance at those has been really small. And it was not quite normal this year, but pretty close to normal.
Do you does the media normally come to the library when you have these? So this is basic. Okay, fine. So on one end, the media offers exposure and offers, it kind of partners in a way with raising awareness, but I think they're also exploitive. But that's just my opinion. My opinion doesn't matter. But so it's like a two thing where they're like they exploiting tragedy, but also raising awareness of the hard work that you're doing. So there's like this two things that are going on. But you're saying that there was more of the media than something that would happen like during the year, or something that you would do that was, so they were, in my opinion, exploiting the tragedy.
Yes, I think so. Normally we have filming permissions that they have to fill out and get permission to come in the library.
Okay.
Which we had given that free press reporter because I don't know, it seemed like she was going to do a pretty full story on it.
Okay.
And then after that, they all just kind of showed up and started setting up their cameras. And so it got to a point on campus, I probably didn't explain that graphic very well, that University Communications was handing out signs for students that they could hold up that say, "No media, please."
Okay.
Because we're just like, and you would think MSU, unfortunately, we're somewhat used to this because we keep going through tragedy after tragedy with Larry Nassar and all of that too. So.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing and for taking the time to talk about like a difficult, that you experienced, being a librarian at MSU for so many years. So thank you. Are there any more questions for Holly or any comments? Okay. So Jessica and I would like to thank everyone for attending, and also to thank the presenters who took the time to share their successes, their challenges, their obstacles in kind of like having these library events. It's a risk, right? There's always, some library events are successful, some aren't, so thank you to the presenters, and thank you all for attending. We typically have meetings once a semester, so Jessica and I will hopefully have another meeting in the fall, probably virtual, probably maybe hybrid, maybe in person, maybe with a Zoom option. But it seems that there's definitely, greater attendance in a Zoom meeting. And although we're both in greater New York City, everyone's welcome, and ACRL, the Library Marketing and Outreach interest group, which is now a discussion group, there are local meetups, and whether the meetups are in person or whether they're virtual or hybrid, there are local meetups throughout the United States. So, and of course, ACRL has chapters throughout the country, and ACRL also has national membership, and you're not, you don't have to join. So thank you for everyone for attending this afternoon. And thanks for the presenters. This is recorded. This will be posted on the website, www.acrl-lmodg-nyc.org. So
I put it in the chat again.
Thank you. Jessica, am I missing anything, or is there anything that
I would say if anyone is interested in specific marketing topics that you would like us to do a call for proposal on for our next session, we come up with the ideas for the themes, but we'd love to hear from you if there are things you'd like us to do a session on. So please feel free to email Mark or myself.
Yeah, please. Yes, please do. Yes. Because we're trying to, we've had this group since like 2015, and we try to have like 2 meetings a year, even during the pandemic. So, if you notice a particular theme that relates to marketing or outreach, please email us, and we'd be very happy to have like a theme meeting for the fall. So thank you, everyone who attended. Have a wonderful rest of the summer, and we'll definitely see you at the next meeting in the fall.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks, Mom.
Thank you, Holly, Lena, Michael, Justine. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh, that was so upsetting. I actually asked Holly to present. So yeah. So
that was great though.
Yeah, I remember when it happened, and she told me. I emailed her, and I'm like, oh, can you do that? Can you just present? This is so important, and
yeah,
and
I mean, it's unfortunate when we don't know it could happen to anyone, unfortunately. So to know how someone else went through it is valuable.
Definitely. And Lena, thank you so much for sharing, especially about the liabilities. That was very useful, because I think liabilities are really important when you have, the legal logistics. So thank you so much for talking about that, and having Peter come to present with you. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a lot of logistics. I was an undergrad at the time. It was like a part-time job.
Right.
Because there was, it was an 800-person